Like, I genuinely think that making him into a marketable plushie skyrockets his value. Mahalo and welcome back to You and Idol Precure, episode 5. Jumping right into it, we see the best character thus far in the series. That's right, the coffee float. I mean, look at her, she's so beautiful. The brown and the white complementing each other, the translucency. Don't get me started on a good drink. But in all seriousness, we finally get a little more details on where we left off last episode with Tanaka, the manager. Contrary to my personal belief, he has a connection with Kirikiland, more so than he does with Kaito. So I guess that was just kind of like timing, I guess. They just kind of happened to pass each other in so close proximity just to get the story going along, I guess. I'm surprised that he didn't have any sort of connection to Kaito, but it does mean that something very silly is going to happen in the future, and I actually am looking more forward to that. I also love that the girl's reaction to him showing up is like, ooh, stranger danger, bye dude. They just leave. They're like, what's that? Weirdo. Like, at least these girls have a strong sense of self-preservation, and that's really what matters the most. Nonetheless, he's very persistent. He rolls up and he's like, hey girls, and by the way, I'm from Kyoto, and I want to be specifically your manager. And they then go to confide in Picarine, who now gets to introduce herself to Nana, but also reveal that, yo, this dude is from Kirikiland. Crazy, you know? He's very normal. And in the most, like, no thought behind her eyes moment, we have Pudadun being like, oomst? I've never seen this man in my life. But back to that silly Billy thing that could potentially happen. Pudadun is like, yo, I knew a dude like that, but he looked like this. Interestingly, in this episode, we never get to see this form. This is the closest we get, but I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna be a little goober at some point. We're gonna see the goobin version of him. We're gonna get that marketable plushy fairy version of him, and I'm so hyped for that. Like, I genuinely think that making him into a marketable plushie skyrockets his value. I feel a little robbed that we don't get to see it, but that just means when we see it. The fact that they're holding out on us means whatever this reveal is gonna be so goofy silly. And the best part is that his voice is gonna go up like 18 octaves. Every time we have a fairy that's a human first, they have like their deep voice, and then they go into the booth and they're like, we're taking that pitch to the top. We're taking that to the... He's gonna have such a squeaky voice, it's gonna be great. If they give him a deep pitch voice, then illegal. Absolutely illegal. I want him to be the doofiest little fairy we ever get. But one day. We gotta hold it in. We gotta hold it in. That's for the future. That's for a future bit. Can't bring all the goofy silliness this early on. But in a more mundane, goofy, silly way, he's like, yeah, I am the branch office manager. Let me take you there. Showcases this like little hut that he's been chilling out in this whole time, that's also been in the city the whole time. Like, no one went into the forest and was like, oh, by the way, there's a whole fairy house up here. There's a whole little tiny like baby hut going on. That's part of a corporation. I mean, it even, look at, it's got address plates. This has address, he registered with the city. Like, he did it. I mean, like, let's be real though. He's like, yes, we went corporate. It's giving corporate fairy. It also explains why he was spared in all of, like, the nonsense that occurred when the kingdom, like, kind of wasn't doing so hot. We still don't know why Pudadun survived, and eventually why Metadon survived, but, like, he's like, yeah, I was just chilling out here in good old human land where there's no issues. Also, this is one of those things that we also learn that very likely, unless the end of the series feels like being super duper rude, that we're not going to have a separation story, like, when you think about it. Because if they had a branch office on Earth the whole time, then there's not going to be that lovely plot that they love to shove in every Precure series just to make me feel pain. Where they're like, oh no, the worlds that we live in are separated. Say goodbye to all the fairies and all the non-humans, and you're gonna cry a lot. We don't get to do that because they have a branch office. Like, the connection between the worlds always was there. Simple and easy. Also, Pudadun also just, like, took the river to go back to the land, so, like, you know, the ending is at least not going to go that way. And if they do, they're absolutely cheating. Nonetheless, while they're explaining the situation, he's like, yeah, I'm here to be your manager for your Precure duties, just to be some kind of support. Not quite sure what that would even entail. When he's like, I'm just here for you guys to support you being Precure who saved the day. And I'm like, what are you gonna do, dude? Like, what function do you have? Like, they literally give him an actual job description by being like, hey, randomly on our videos, we got a comment saying we should do this whole makeup deal. Which also love the fact that they're like, let's pursue this. And it didn't end up being a scam because, like, the bots love to put that kind of information. The bots love to come at you being like, promote my business. Like, it's a miracle this wasn't a scam. We know it's not because it's the kid show. But nonetheless, they shoe in Pretty Holic, which is great. I was curious how those come in here. I gotta say, for the seasons we've had Pretty Holic thus far, it felt like the Pretty Holic presence for this season was real weak. But they're bringing it back. Like, we're finally getting there. They're bringing in the lipstick that's shaped like a bow. For now. And then more. And then Pudurun convinces Tanaka to let them do it. When he was like, no, we're just kind of here to do the superhero thing. Like, the whole actual idol aspect of it was just kind of like branding. We're not actual for reals. And then Pudurun's like, no. Like, despite multiple times the series being like, Pudurun, there's boundaries. Pudurun's like, screw it, we're doing everything. We're idols. It's not about being a Precure. It's about being the idol. Shout out to Pudurun being the #1 fan. And then we meet our nice branding marketing lady, who is real and not a scam. And we get to see the new merchandise. I should probably pre-order these, because I always get the Pretty Holic stuff, and that stuff is significantly more difficult to get after the season airs, because it's makeup and it's more temporary. Like, Delicious Party being the worst offender of it because that was food, and food obviously does not last forever. But, I'm pretty happy with the way these look, marketing-wise. They're super different from the branding that they've done thus far with the lipsticks, which is the only thing that kind of bothers me is the lack of consistency, but the concept's really cool, so I forgive them. I also love that this is also heart-shaped. I wonder if they're all going to be, because the interesting thing about the way they handled, for anybody who doesn't physically own, the wonderful Precure lipstick, one for the animals was like a real like matte lipstick that you put on, and then the humans were gloss, which I thought was an interesting combo because they wanted you to basically buy like the Komugi and Iroha as a pair, so one would be the matte color and the next one would be a gloss finish that you put on top, and then they did that again for Lillian and Mayu. I wonder, like, I assume that Idols is probably going to be a matte, but I wonder if they have all matte and no gloss this season. I'm curious how that happens. This is why I gotta purchase it. Has to know. And then we, of course, get my graphic design is my passion poster going on over here. And we get to see that lovely Pretty Holic logo once more. I do love that they gave this girl, like a TM backstory thing going on here. And then shout out to the previous, like, I think this is the first gen. I think this is the Futariwa gen. Actually, I don't think it's the first gen, but, like, they are doing a current release for it where the, because I think the bottles were originally had, like, just a matte paint finish, and now they have a glossy paint finish. I haven't purchased this one, because it was a little bit harder to get my hands on, and I don't have as much interest, because I think this one is a lot more boring than the other ones. But I'm glad that they have this callback, as well as, like, buy the other ones as well. I also think that's funny that's Futariwa, because the first one was Tropical Rouge. But she's like, oh my god, when I was an adolescent, and I was like, girl, these did not exist when you were a kid. Not unless you were a kid, like, 4 years ago. And specifically for this brand, I guess this one was like, what, 2 years ago? And not that old. She sped run childhood. Nonetheless, back to the story at hand. We did, as was predicted, we did talk to Kaito again, but not the way I thought it would go. I thought we would just talk to him pretty soon in the episode. Instead, he appears to be the character that, like, we're gonna have a moment with in episodes where it's like, I don't know what to do with my life in the current predicament I'm dealing with. Let's talk to Kaito and get advice from him and see what we should do. The specific flavor advice this episode was like, what was your first gig like? And he's like, it was, and then gets cut off. So she has to figure out that lesson on her own. I love that they do this gimmick, and then also just to really drive home that you should buy the lipstick, is that she grabs the lipstick instead of her transformation device, but, like, at the end of the day, the little transformation ribbon is technically the inspiration for the lipstick. You know. But, I thought that was a cute little nod. I'm a sucker. What can I say? I'm a sucker for smart marketing. I'm a material girl. The two proceed to go through the photo shoot for their first little marketing campaign, and as kind of goes as expected, they mess up a bit. They are clearly not in the profession, and this is their first gig, so it makes a lot of sense that they'd struggle for the first round. And we nearly killed Puridoon off. Like, I cannot believe so soon in this series we're already trying to off characters, but Puridoon nearly, like, you know, took a hit here. Suffocating her? This is so aggressive. Like, calm down, Idol. Calm down. Poor little baby never stood a chance. Couldn't even make it to the middle of the season. Nonetheless, our little marketing lady is like, hey girls, I know it's stressful, but don't you worry, I got you. You guys just look at me and not the camera. And that magically solves the problem. That's how we deal with the issue. I'm surprised that Tanaka did, like, nothing here. This was, like, kind of his episode, but he's really taken a backseat. Like, I know that this girl's gonna be our victim of the episode, but, like, I kind of was preferring last episode where our victim played, like, a much more minor role in what was going on, and they were just kind of, like, collateral. I think I've grown more accustomed to liking that with, like, if we're going to have a character that is the quote-unquote victim. I'm also curious if this will be, like, I didn't used to feel this way, but I feel this way now. And specifically, Leo pointed this out, where there are seasons of magical girl shows where the gimmick is that you meet a brand new character every episode, and that character only persists for that episode, and you might see them in the finale. I feel like some seasons did a better job at making those characters reoccurring. Hugato is the first one that comes to mind in that regard. But yeah, I do feel like we're getting a lot of screen time in this episode to our branding woman, that she might as well come back if I have to spend this much time getting to know her and knowing her not sad TM backstory. This is also kind of a S.H.I.E.L.D. episode. The fight is not the focal point of this episode at any stretch of the imagination, and you can tell it's not a focal point when we're just using shields the whole time. Good old shields, we get 2 of them, but to Link's defense, they both succeed at working. There's no breakage. So this is where I kind of, like, had to reflect on how I feel about Tanaka, because we have had some very strong seasons recently with very strong supporting male characters. Like, I'm not even gonna, like, bring up Satoru since he's more on the kid side, but when we come down to, like, Mei Mei, and you've got Mari-chan from Delicious Party, like, I feel like for me personally, they put the bar so high in the sky. Like, I think the way that Delicious Party handled the first few episodes and included Mari-chan was so good. Albeit he obviously had more of a presence than Tanaka does. He was there from the start and was one of the catalysts. But it was kind of lackluster, where Tanaka was like, I thought they were going to do more with the fact that it started off with being like, hey Tanaka, we're the Cures, we're going to go fight, you stay here. And then he's like, no, and Puridoon's like, stop running into the fight. But then he doesn't actually run into the fight. Like, he just kind of sits there and, like, looks panicked the whole time. He's like, oh shoot, I just got these middle school girls to go fight something for the sake of my kingdom, and they could die. Like, he has a little bit of urgency and reflection on his actions, which is something that I think other seasons have done a really good job with. Again, I think Mari-chan was a prime example of this. I also think the Ravenine episode in Healing Good was really good with that in the beginning. This was just kind of like, This was just kind of, I'm not expecting myself to, like, really love Tanaka as a character, but I also don't think they're, like, given how little his presence is in this episode outside of explaining who he is, I don't think they're gonna do much with him. He's just kind of there. Like, I do think it's harder when you have a character who's supposed to be kind of deadpan most of the time, but I feel like his presence is almost unnecessary. I think they just wanted to lean into the Idol bit, and they're like, oh, you know, every Idol series loves to shoehorn in a manager somewhere in there. But, like, I feel like for as much as the manager character is a placeholder, I still think Idolmaster did it a lot better. I'm not super loving Tanaka, but I think if they put him in a fairy form, he could go up there. He could be much higher. Nonetheless, we survived the battle. Everything's good. We get our little makeup campaign. Girls step it up. They look cute. We sell items to children. The debatably capitalistic, manipulative maneuvers of children's media that I as an adult absolutely fall for. I do like this shot though, because this reminds me of the shot that they, like this silhouette specifically, they used in all of the marketing for the Delicious Party campaign. So I'm glad that this, whether it's unintentionally or intentionally, it's a nice nod. I also think it's just a very stereotypical pose for lipstick. We also now have the presence of Pretty Holic, and we also have the explanation of why it wasn't there before. I also like that this is very similar to the Pretty Holic presence at the beginning of Hidogodu Sky Precure. I'm making so many references to other seasons right now. But in that one, you have, like, this generic brown-haired girl who's on the screen on top of her, Pretty Holic, ultimately shilling that one out as well. So I kind of feel like I don't know if it's an intentional nod or it's just consistency. It reminded me of that. And then Kaito rolls up and Uta's like, yo, dude, what were you gonna say? What's your whole, like, what was the big thing that mattered with your first gig? Like, what was the #1 priority? And as if I had not said it but so many episodes ago, that being 1 episode ago, his whole shtick is I wanted to make sure that everybody who was working with me smiled. We've never heard that line before in Precure. Like clockwork, they can't resist. They can't resist that line. It's their favorite thing. I knew it. I knew it. I knew this guy was gonna say that at some point. He couldn't escape it. It's the Precure way. Also, shout out to the villain. I forgot to mention this before, but shout out to him being like, wow, that Cure wink was actually pretty entertaining. I'm like, we have another fan. They're all just gonna, like, they all are gonna stop being evil villains, not because they're failures, but because they're fans. Nonetheless, Tanaka is like, hey, I'm actually gonna moonlight and work at your cafe on top of being your manager because of the best character in this episode, which once again, is the coffee float. He understands what's up. I give him that. He has taste. He might not have much going for him, except for the potential to be a fairy and liking coffee floats. There we go. And then Purirun's very excited that he's here. So someone likes him, someone cares. And then the last bit, we get to slide into what's gonna happen next episode. We're finally gonna get our girl Kokoro being more relevant to the story and starting the Kyun arc. I'm super excited because honestly, she feels like she's gonna be my favorite character this season. Unless Metadon and Purirun like really up stakes later down the line, I'm feeling like my girl Kyun over here is gonna be best girl. I'm super excited for next week, but until then, I will see you guys next time. Bye!